All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Natalie Michael. Natalie, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Hey, Kevin, I've been looking forward to being here for quite some time.
I have too. You and I. Well, first of all, I want to give a shout out to your PR person because your PR person reached out to me. I don't know, probably 2.5 months ago, and they did such a great job at talking you up. And like by the time I got through reading the email they sent, I was like, oh my gosh, heck yeah, I want to meet Natalie and get to know her a little bit. And so you and I, we got the opportunity to hop on Zoom. It's been a couple months because well, it was summertime and we're all busy and but I'll tell you, after that initial conversation that you and I had, Natalie, I have really been looking forward to doing this interview with you. And I'll tell you, yeah, your PR person, they were very good at talking you up for sure. So,
Well, and I'll give them an official shout out. It was Craig Kleeman and his team at CEO Branding Worldwide. So
okay.
people can feel free to reach out if they've got a similar mission.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what I want to do is I want to start by just I can ask you about what you do, but I don't want to start there. I because you weren't always an entrepreneur. I want to start somewhere in your backstory and find out, how did you first like kind of figure out that you were an entrepreneur? And how did you start going down this path, Natalie?
Yeah. So, little bit of a backstory. What I essentially do now, because it kind of sets the frame, is I
Sure.
support CEOs who are thinking about what is next. So
Okay.
that is whole person coaching for founders and CEOs as it relates to their CEO transition.
Okay.
And sometimes I wonder, how did I get here? But if I look way back, I started my career in psychology.
Okay.
And when I finished my degree, I was really very, very interested actually in consciousness studies and
Mhm.
how we think and our mindset and brain and spirituality and how all those things intersect. And so I had no clue what I was going to do with it. But when I first got into my career, I always had an entrepreneurial flavor to things. So was 100% commission executive search person when I first started, ended up in the dot-com boom, working for a company that grew organically from 2 million to 30 million in 4 years with no
Wow.
outside venture capital funding, which was such a ride. And through that process, I just realized, what I love about the entrepreneurial journey and what exhausts me about the entrepreneurial journey. And I really had to do some soul searching to figure out what was more important than my options plan because
Okay.
a lot of the journey exhausted me. So I had to like do some real digging into who am I, what do I want, how do I want this journey to look for me. And it was definitely a values based entrepreneurial journey that was reinforced every step of the way.
Yeah. Wow. It's interesting. I just recently interviewed a gentleman for the podcast that was telling me how he had built up a very successful business, and he's like Kev, he's like, man, I had it all. I had the cars, the homes, the just everything that I could possibly have wanted, and yet I was just empty inside, and
And
go ahead.
no, like there are certainly benefits to abundant wealth, but there's also a deep sense of responsibility and often a bit of a facing of your destiny and yourself and what you're going to do with that comes with the process. And I say that from my clients that I serve because a number of my clients have had like $100 million exits, and I'm a chair for Tiger 21, where you need to have ultra high net worth. So I've just had this ringside seat to the journey. And what I've learned is that the money is the outcome, that is an outcome that has pros and it has cons. But oftentimes, the people who get there with their spirit intact, they're driven not by the money.
Yeah.
They're driven by a sense of contribution and challenge, and often a restlessness. People who it's the way they calm down is by focusing on something, and the business is a good focus. And I don't think I understood that earlier, but it's definitely something I've witnessed the higher up the food chain I get in the entrepreneurial space.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is the work that you do with entrepreneurs look like today, Natalie?
Today, it really involves supporting founders and CEOs to
Okay.
figure out what's next. And that involves introspection and designing one's life and looking at how the CEO role does or doesn't fit into that.
Okay.
And then it also includes guiding people through that CEO transition process, which could be everything from really defining like who is the CEO of the future? How do we set them up for success? How does a founder or CEO need to support that process? And all the nuances and politics and emotions that go along with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you alluded to it, and maybe I misunderstood, but are there some of the clients that you work with that through the process are discovering that like, oh, I don't even want to be a CEO anymore and figuring
Sure.
out what's next in that realm?
Yes, I would say when people come to me, they're either trying to become a CEO, so they're moving up into the C-suite, they're in it, or they're moving out. I kind of think about that arc.
Okay.
But of course, with demographics right now, a lot of people are thinking about moving out. And, if you're a founder, I start working with you kind of when you're being really proactive and you see that something on the horizon is like 4 years out and you want to be proactive and methodical, or you've just hit a point where you're done. I had one client who was so stressed out about his business that he literally like sold off locations and almost like a fire sale just because he couldn't deal with it anymore. And when he came to me, he had his crown jewel office standing and he said, I want this company. I got to figure out how to actually be that mentor and delegator so that I can keep my legacy alive here, but not work in the business anymore. So that was the problem we were trying to solve for him specifically.
Okay. Okay. So what, and you have to name names or anything like that, but what is an example of a result that you have helped a client get that you are just extremely proud of, Natalie?
Oh, that's such a wonderful question. I don't know that I associate it with being proud,
Okay.
but it's more about the acknowledgement that the client provides as we move through the experience.
Okay.
And it's when people say to me things like, what you gave me was so much bigger than what I ever anticipated. You really was able to hold me as a whole person. I was grateful for the technical parts of the transition, but it was more that I felt very seen and you understood what mattered to me. Um, and then when a client becomes a friend, as they move to that next stage, that's the piece. I have no uh need for glory. I don't really care about any of that stuff anymore, but each time I get a client, it's like a little piece of art. It's my art. And so it's more about the relationship we have as we go through it that is what is deeply gratifying.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you find that when you finish an engagement with a client that with many of them, you're still friends and just remain in contact with each other long after the engagement and the working experience may be done?
Varies.
Yeah.
it varies, but what is true is that when you get to this level with people, you're in each other's circle of trust.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a high school friend from high school. You might not talk every day, but when you do, you pick up where you left off. It's
Absolutely.
it's like that.
Yeah. 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 How long have you been doing this now, Natalie?
In various forms for about 15 years, but with the real focus and commitment to the CEO transitions as the focus and the CEO next chapter. That's been about, I would say, 7 or so years now.
Okay, 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 gotcha. And so, what are some of the things that a person would be thinking about, or challenges they might be dealing with that would cause them to like, oh, maybe I should talk with Natalie?
I mean, I sort of alluded to it. It's somebody who's moving up into or out of the C-suite,
Okay.
right? And specifically the CEO role. And so what it can look like is a founder or CEO trying to really get clear before they instigate a CEO succession process.
Mhm.
Why are they doing that? What are they moving towards, right? What is their personal vision? What role do they want to play? And so there's a whole discovery we go through around that. For others, it might be, no, I'm ready to make sure that I've got that next one or two people in my talent continuity pipeline and they have really meaningful plans and I understand what matters to them and their goals. And the CEO is caring, they care about the people and they're forward looking. They know it's going to take some time.
Mhm.
And then the third is someone who says, yes, I've been tapped as an XCO and I need to navigate this process intentionally. And I need my own person to kind of talk to
Yeah,
as I'm going through this because each step of the way, I want to show up with my ideas clear,
yeah,
not thinking things through as I'm speaking.
yeah. Okay, very good. Well, I really appreciate you sharing all of that. And now that we've got a little bit of context set here, now that listeners know a little bit about who Natalie is and what you're all about, Natalie, I want to switch gears just a little bit. Not a lot, but I want to ask you the question around relationships that I want to dig into with you. And so, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah, I think it's such a beautiful question that you ask people, Kevin, and it's one that's really thought-provoking. It took some time to think of that person in the moment, right? And it's no surprise. It was a moment of affirming me and giving me courage.
Okay.
So I'll give you the exact example because it was so clear. So way back when I first started coaching, I thought I'd like to kind of get into the CEO stuff. And I remember getting my very first client. And when he said yes, he was going to go with me, I was like completely shocked. I was like, okay,
My
next,
gosh,
right?
they said
And
yes.
then I know it was like, oh my gosh. And then he referred somebody else. And so it just kind of rolled like that. But I've been running peer groups for about a decade now. And when clients were finished with a coaching engagement with me, they were joining peer groups.
Okay.
And I specifically do peer groups in Canada with a company called McKay CEO Forums for CEOs and also for Tiger 21, these ultra high net worth people. But I remember that I had faith in myself to launch a peer group, which is one of the key parts of the peer group experience. You need your contacts and blah, blah, blah. But I did such a good job at that that the founder of the company said, I'm going to give you my peer group to run because I'm going to move out of running peer groups and become the CEO. And I looked at the bios of these people, and they were like, one of them was running $1 billion company, one was like running a huge crown corporation, one was like top entrepreneur, this, that, and the other. And I was just like, I cannot do this. And I remember just like going, I cannot do this. No way. And she looked at me and she said, yes, you can. Who would be better than you? I totally have faith you can do this.
Wow.
And I remember going, I don't know, lady, you must be nuts, but I'll try. And I remember in that meeting, like just that feeling on the first day that I was like gonna throw up. Like I just felt so in over my head. And but her words were like, yes, you can. I believe in you. I had to take those in. I had to take her faith in me and have the faith myself in order to get through that experience. And when I was like choking in self doubt, I remember just saying the words in my head, I add value. I add value. I'm adding value. I'm adding value. Listen to add value. Listen to add value. And that mantra combined with her kind of energetically holding my power was really key.
Yeah.
And, I fast forward to today, and one of my strengths is being able to hold space for very, very powerful entrepreneurs. And I would not be able to do the work that I did if it wasn't for that moment where I realized maybe I can do this. It wasn't like overnight, it took me years to be able to do that. But when I combine her faith in me with my own personal development around holding space for powerful people, that's what my whole career's been built on.
Yeah. Wow. You know, it sure is awesome to have people in our lives that can see things in us that we might not be able to see for ourselves sometimes, and that's pretty powerful because that's exactly what she saw in you, that like, oh my gosh, you totally got this. And you're like, what? Nah.
I know, I know. And through that experience, I've been exposed to these people who continue to inspire me,
Yeah.
right? And just one quick story because he's inspired me so much is I've been so fortunate in my forum to have a man who, on paper, um, is just one of the most successful entrepreneurs in Canada and that I know for sure. Built multiple businesses, highly successful, has a foundation, blah, blah, blah. That man has inspired me as well because he does not lead with that at all.
Yeah.
He's the most low key person in the room, big brain for sure. But what he taught me is that when we go through hardship in life, we learn what matters. And people I really respect are people who, yes, they have achieved great things in their life, but they've done it knowing what matters,
Yeah.
right? And for him, you know, part of his journey almost split all his relationships. And he said, home is where my wife is. And he's so rooted in his family and his love of a challenge as being his driver and not all the things that we might associate like status, power, money. And when you see someone like that behave like that, it gives you permission to put that stuff first. And I'm very grateful for his inspiration as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because there are so many similarities between you and I, and how
Mm.
because I had a friend of mine that in 2013, so wow, 12 years ago, you know, shared some stuff with me that he saw that I did not see. And he's like, Kevin, he's like, this is just how you show up. you just show up this way and he's like, so we were at a seminar and there was probably, I don't know, maybe 500 entrepreneurs at this seminar back in Washington, D.C. And it was a 3 day event. And on the third day, we were having lunch. And he was telling me, he's like, Kevin, he's like, it's really interesting. He's like, when you watch people, and he's like, when you watch people having conversations, either in the hallway or in the bar or whatever, and he's like, so many people that are engaged in conversations, they're not both engaged. One person's talking and the other one's like actively trying to get out of the conversation and maybe looking at the scanning the room or whatever. And he's like, but he's like, every time I saw you in a conversation with anybody, he's like, it was like both of you were 100% engaged. He's like, it was like that Get Smart show and that thing, and that dome comes over the two of them, and they're just completely locked into the conversation with you. He's like, that's what it is like for you when you communicate with people. And he's like, and he's like, you have an amazing gift. And I never noticed that before because I'm just my wife and I were talking about this weekend. I'm this naturally curious guy, and I do ask a lot of questions, as I've been asking a lot of questions of you today.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And my wife is, she's like, yeah, you just love asking questions all the time. And I love talking with entrepreneurs. I love hearing about what they're working on. I love hearing what jazzes them. I love hearing what they're excited about, what problems they're having with, what challenges they're dealing with. And I just always default to who do I know that might be able to help with this. And
Agree.
and you're right that the more successful an entrepreneur becomes, the smaller their circle becomes of people that they can truly trust and confide in and stuff. And I've experienced that over the years. And it took me a while too to, to get past that feeling of like, oh my gosh, they run this huge successful company. And
Yeah,
and because what you now know too, I'm sure, is the reality is everybody, all of us, we're for one, we're way more alike than we are different, and we're all doing the best we can with what we've got.
that's right.
And it doesn't
And
matter how successful somebody is. And
so true. Like through the work as a Tiger 21 chair, it's kind of like they say it's like life after the exit or when you're thinking about what's next. But I think a lot of people think that those conversations are about, squeezing a percentage point on your investments. And it's like so the furthest thing. It's very much about how to set your family up for success and how to stay true to what matters to you in a world that's maybe giving you strokes for what's maybe not as important,
yeah,
right? And, I have one friend and client who, after her exit, I really admired her because she won all sorts of awards, had this exit that was, what most people could ever dream of. And when she was done, she went on a spiritual sabbatical. So she rented a house on an island by herself, meditated, walked in the woods every day, and she just like found herself again. And it was interesting because she said it was really hard because she was so addicted to like feeding her restless energy with action. But it also created a clearing that allowed her to step into what was new from a new identity. And I remember asking her, saying, "Hey, you want to come speak at this conference on your exit?" And she's like, "I'm complete. I don't need to share that story anymore."
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. It's funny. I have a friend of mine. He's been on sabbatical for, well, so I'm trying to think here, for at least a year and a half now. And last year in April, he'd already been on sabbatical for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months actually at that time. And I went to this one event for entrepreneurs, and he was there, and we got to connect and all that, and I was going to that person was hosting another event just this last month that I
Mm.
went to again 2 weeks ago. And I got a hold of my friend who's on sabbatical, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to go to this event here in September. Are you going to be there too?" And he's like, "Honestly, Kev," he's like, "it just makes no sense whatsoever at this point for me to go to an event and talk with entrepreneurs and hang out with entrepreneurs." He's like, "I'm just completely disconnected from that now and stuff, you know." And
Whoa.
we're just doing our thing and enjoying life with the family, and he's like, "So no," he's like, I won't be seeing you there this year." And I thought, like, well, how cool is that?
Yeah,
So,
I know. I know. We have a program called CEO Next Chapter, and it's where CEOs come and they figure out what they want to do next. And we always joke like more bands come out of that program than anything else because people are like, man, I just put so much energy into my company or my job or whatever. I never got to play the guitar or the trumpet or jam with friends. And I don't want to die not having experience that creativity. So it's really neat to see who you become when you're not working all the time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow, wow. That's really nice. So a lot of people want to get into music. That's how they start just like really exploring. And the other gentleman I told you about that I interviewed, he's into music. He's like, "Kevin, I love music."
Yeah, I
But
know. I know. I had this one guy, and he was one of the advisors when we were creating the Next Chapter program, and he said when he stopped being a CEO, he moved to Sedona. And
okay,
Sedona is one of my favorite
it's
places, like this total
beautiful.
like hippie place in the US. And people said, "Well, what did you do for your career? Who are you?" And he would say, "I'm a poet." And he just totally just didn't want to say, "Oh, I was a CEO," and then have that whole conversation. So it's again, it's just, I mean, you can do it however way you want, but it's just nice to give yourself some permission to be a different version of you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Personally, for me, I'm loving where I am in the entrepreneurial journey, and I'm really embracing. Don't think I ever saw myself as entrepreneurial. I always served the entrepreneurs, but now it's a very big part of my priority, and it's just so fun. So I'm at the opposite end. I'm like right in it and loving
yeah.
it.
And it's interesting because I really, that really lands with me too. I turned 60 2 months ago, and I feel like I'm just now really catching my flow.
Hmm.
And that I've been building and creating all these relationships for 30 years now, and that, like, now I'm making these introductions and piecing these things together, and it's just because of who I get to serve, the impact just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and I'm like, and and you know what, nobody will ever even know that I was there. But, well, I mean, nobody on the receiving end of all that, but I know I was there, and I don't care that
Exactly.
nobody else knows. It's good enough. And it's just so rewarding for me. And at least right now, my brother is 2 years younger than me, and he's looking at retiring in the next couple of years. And he's been planning for this for many years. And in his mind, retiring, it's not like he hasn't had to live. He's lived all over the country or all over the world in many different places and through his work and stuff. But his thought process is, well, now in a couple more years, I'm going to be able to finally start really living life the way that I want to live it.
Right, right.
And I'm thinking, Kyle, I'm doing that right now. And,
Uh-huh.
and I don't want to right now I can't see changing anything. And as long as I feel that way, I'm just going to keep doing my thing. And
And that's Kevin, that's kind of the thing that I hold for my clients. It's like, how do you build a life you never want to retire from, right? Because I really feel that too. And I was reading this book lately called The 100-Year Life. And it was basically saying how for every decade in the developed world, we have 2 years added to our lifespan. And so the probability of living to 100 is going up
Mhm.
every decade. And with the advancements of AI and longevity and wearable technology for health and everything, it just keeps going up and up and up. So it really has you think. Like this 65 benchmark is just no longer relevant if our lifespan's that much longer, and we know that purpose and relationships and money and all of and health are all these catalysts for being fulfilled. So it just begs a bit of a different question of and for me I found that if I put my stuff in my calendar first, like okay, what are the things that I need to nourish myself and be healthy and engaged, that goes in first,
Yes.
and then I kind of serve around that, then I feel like it's in the right order.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you familiar with Dan Sullivan and Strategic Coach at all?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
I haven't taken his program, but I respect it very much.
Yeah, because what you mentioned, I started learning from him years ago, and I've been a strategic coach for a few years, and he teaches the entrepreneurial time system, which is this, free days, focus days, and buffer days, and
That's
free
right.
days
Yeah.
are what you're talking about is the days where we get to just disconnect from work and energize ourselves and nourish ourselves so that when we are at work we're at our very best. But the free days, they go on the calendar first, and you
Yeah.
put your calendar out for a year and you plan your free days in advance, just like what you're
That's
talking about and stuff.
yeah.
And
I've started playing with silence weekends. And so
okay.
this is a new thing for me in the last couple of years. But I'm already planning for my next one. And it's just like 3 days. We'll go like into the forest and have a bit of like a backcountry experience, but I do it by myself.
Okay.
And I don't talk to anyone unless like I have to solve a transaction. And it's very interesting for me since I've been doing it. I'm going on my third one next year,
Okay.
because you just see how much time it takes to decompress the chatter,
Yeah.
right? And I find that by about 3 days is the longest I've done it, but by day three, I can hear a different I have a different connection
Oh.
to myself and the world after 3 days of silence. And it's very I think a very important part of how I want to serve and lead in the world is not from that, you know, uh monkey mind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Well, I'll tell you, Natalie, I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation today. And for anybody that's listening to this, maybe there's some folks listening to this thinking like, man, Kevin, I really like Natalie. I love how she shows up. And maybe they're even thinking, maybe she might be able to help me, or maybe I know somebody else that she might be able to help. Any resources, any websites we can share with folks?
Yeah. So, well, before I share that, I want to thank you, Kevin. So, thank you for doing your work in the world and inviting me here. It was very inspiring to me, both the question you asked and the choice that you made in your own work to focus on relationships. So, just thank you for affirming all of that. Really a pleasure for me as well. The website is called ceonextchapter.com.
Okay.
Very easy to remember. CEO Next Chapter. And that's essentially the essence of what we do in the world.
Awesome. Awesome. Any last thing you feel led to share before we call it a wrap, Natalie?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Well, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you. And I'm looking forward to getting this out there and share it with a lot of other entrepreneurs. So thanks so much.